You know, you can be friends with someone for years, grow up right next door, share countless memories, and still never truly know them. Sometimes, people are just pretending to be your friend, skillfully manipulating your emotions, answering your sincerity and trust with nothing but lies and just calculated betrayal. Look, disappointments are unfortunately a part of life, but treachery is the last thing we expect from those we call friends. And way too often, we place this blind trust in them. There was this case, a young college student from the UK, and it shocked the entire country with its level of cruelty and heartlessness. But the most disturbing part? The person responsible never raised any suspicion, not even when they had no alibi or when their behavior started to get strange. What protected them, really, was the long-standing bond they shared with the victim. I mean, they had known each other since they were little kids, lived next door for years, and everyone thought they were close friends. So when the truth finally came out, God, neither the victim's parents nor their mutual friends could believe it. The betrayal just seemed unfathomable. Only a few people believed it, and they were the ones who had previously managed to escape harm at the hands of this seemingly harmless young man. They had seen right past the friendly facade and lived to tell a very different story. Before we jump in, I want to know, where are you watching from? What's the time over there and how's the weather? And also, what case do you want to see next? Drop your answer in the comments. I read them all. Don't forget to subscribe. All right, let's get into it. Keely Bunker was born on September 7th, 1999, in the town of Tamworth, which is in Staffordshire, a county in the western part of England. She was the oldest of 3 siblings and the only daughter in the Bunker family, who lived a modest, hard-working life. From an early age, Keely was a source of strength and comfort for her mother, helping out with her younger brothers and supporting the household. She was very close to her family, and her parents would often say she was the kind of daughter people could only dream of. Friends and neighbors described her as warm-hearted, compassionate, and just, always willing to lend a hand to anyone in need. In school, Keely did well academically and had a passion for literature, music, and modern dance. She was well-read, intelligent, and always an interesting person to talk to. She had a wide circle of friends who adored her, not only because she was kind and supportive, but because she genuinely cared about other people. By the time she was in high school, Keely had her future all figured out. She wanted to work in education and dreamed of becoming an elementary school teacher. And honestly, it made perfect sense to everyone who knew her. She had always loved working with young kids and was more than happy to babysit both her brothers and the neighbors' little ones. After graduating, Keely was accepted into a teaching program at a respected educational institute that was part of Staffordshire University. She was overjoyed, and her parents were incredibly proud. She quickly adapted to student life, made new friends, and found her coursework manageable. She kept up with her dancing and stayed socially active, regularly attending concerts, sporting events, and campus parties with fellow students. Keely also maintained a social media presence, where she shared photos, updates about school, and little glimpses into her daily life. In the summer of 2019, at the age of 19, Keely began looking for her first real job. Before long, she got an interview for a teacher's assistant position at an elementary school. And get this, it was the very same one she had recently graduated from. It was a real full-circle moment for her, and she was thrilled to start working there at the end of September. Keely took the job on a part-time basis so she could balance work with her college studies. She was preparing for this new chapter in her life with a lot of excitement, confident that it would be the perfect stepping stone for her teaching career. Around the same time, she was also getting ready to celebrate her 20th birthday, her first big milestone as an adult. On Saturday, September 7th, 2019, Keely planned a quiet celebration at home with her family. The small gathering included her parents, younger brothers, grandparents, and her maternal uncle with his wife and their kids. These were the people Keely loved most, and she was saving the party with friends for a later date. The following Saturday, September 14th, Keely threw a party with her college friends at a local venue. The night was just filled with music, dancing, and laughter. Keely looked radiant and so full of life. Among the guests were her best friend, Monica Brown, and her childhood neighbor, Wesley Street. Keely had known both of them since grade school. They'd grown up together, and she really considered them part of her inner circle. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. No one could have ever predicted that Keely had less than a week left to live. As a birthday gift, Monica had given Keely tickets to a concert by their favorite rapper, set for Wednesday, September 18th, in the nearby city of Brighton. The two of them had been looking forward to the event and had planned everything out in advance. The two college students had several options for getting to the concert and returning home afterward. Both Keely and Monica had driver's licenses in their own cars, but since they planned to relax and enjoy a few drinks that evening, driving was quickly ruled out. Their families could have picked them up, but the show was scheduled to end around 11 p.m., and everyone had to be up early the next day for work or school. Taking the train seemed like the most reasonable choice. There was just one small catch, though. The train back from Brighton to Tamworth. It only ran once during the night, at 2 a.m. Still, the girls weren't too worried. They figured they had more than enough time after the concert to make it to the station. On the day of the event, the two friends got ready and traveled together to see their favorite hip-hop artist perform. They had a fantastic time dancing, singing along, and enjoying every minute of the show. Afterward, still full of energy and with nearly 3 hours to spare before that last train, they decided to hang out at a local bar. At the bar, they ran into Wesley Street, who had originally shown up with a different group. When he saw Keely and Monica, though, he left his table to join them. The three of them chatted and had a couple of cocktails. They got so caught up in conversation, just enjoying each other's company, that time kind of slipped away. By the time they realized it, the train had already departed. Not wanting to wake their families in the middle of the night for a ride, they decided to just share a cab home. Splitting the fare 3 ways made it an easy decision for them. Surveillance footage from outside the bar showed the three of them leaving together around 2:30 a.m. and getting into a taxi. The drive home took about 30 minutes, and the group got out near Monica's place. Keely had left a makeup bag and some perfume there earlier when they were getting ready, and she wanted to pick up her things. Monica offered to let her spend the night, but Keely told her she had errands to run the next morning. She wanted to change clothes and grab a few things from her room. Her house was only about a 15-minute walk away, and Wesley lived nearby, on a parallel street. Keely even kind of joked with Monica, telling her not to worry, that she had Wesley with her, and he'd look out for them both. Monica didn't argue. The friends said their goodbyes at the front door, and Monica headed inside. About half an hour later, Monica texted Keely to check if she'd made it home safely, but she got no reply. She didn't think much of it at the time. I mean, they had both had a long, exhausting day, and she just assumed Keely had fallen asleep. Monica went to bed and didn't try to call or text again. Keely's parents didn't immediately worry either. They knew their daughter was mature and responsible, independent. They trusted her completely and just never imagined something could go wrong. All evening, Keely had been posting on social media so they could see where she was and who she was with, and since they knew Monica and Wesley well, they didn't have any reason to be concerned. When they realized in the morning that Keely hadn't come home, they just assumed she'd stayed over at Monica's, which was something she had done before. Monica woke up around noon the next day and saw that her friend still hadn't replied to her message. It struck her as unusual, but she reassured herself that Keely was probably just catching up on sleep or had been in a rush and hadn't had time to text back. Monica figured that if something were wrong, Keely's parents would have already raised the alarm. But as the clock approached 3 p.m., and there was still no response, and on top of that, Keely's phone had been turned off. Monica started to feel uneasy. She decided to call Keely's parents to check in and see if everything was okay. That call, it quickly turned into panic. Keely hadn't spent the night at home or at Monica's. Monica explained that Keely had turned down the sleepover, saying she had things to do the next morning. No one had heard from her. Her phone had been off ever since. It was critical to speak with Wesley and find out what had happened. Terrified, Keely's parents went straight to Wesley's house. He answered the door looking half asleep and appeared genuinely shocked to hear that Keely hadn't made it back the night before. He admitted that he hadn't walked her all the way to her door. According to him, they stopped at a phone booth at the corner where their paths split, and Keely had told him she'd be fine on her own. The walk from that spot to her home was only about 150 feet. Wesley said he didn't insist on walking her the rest of the way because he was feeling sick from the drinks and just wanted to get home and into bed. He told Keely goodbye and turned down his street without even looking back to make sure she was safe. Once he got home, he didn't check in or call her. He just shut off his phone and went to sleep. Now, he said, he felt guilty and blamed himself for not walking her all the way home. After hearing his story, Keely's parents went straight to the police and reported her missing. Surprisingly, authorities responded immediately. They didn't insist on waiting the standard 24 hours, despite Keely being an adult, arguing that the circumstances raised enough concern to act right away. Monica and Wesley became the main witnesses in the case, since they were the last people to see and interact with Keely. At first, no one suspected them of anything. After all, they had grown up with Keely and had been friends since grade school. Still, law enforcement needed detailed statements from both of them, as their accounts could be critical to the investigation. Both Monica and Wesley were cooperative and seemed eager to help. They recounted the night's events minute by minute, in great detail, and their stories matched almost exactly. Wesley claimed that after parting ways with Monica, he and Keely walked a short distance together. He said nothing seemed out of place during that time. Nothing suspicious. No signs of danger. He explained that he hadn't escorted her all the way because he was feeling sick from the alcohol and didn't want to get ill in front of her. According to him, they made it to a corner where an old phone booth stood. Keely continued walking straight toward her house, while Wesley turned off onto his street, feeling nausea come on. He never circled back to check on her, nor did he stay to make sure she got inside safely. Unfortunately, the stretch of road Keely had to walk alone had no surveillance cameras, making it impossible to confirm whether she made it home. The incident took place in the early hours of the morning, so there were no bystanders, and none of the neighbors reported seeing or hearing anything unusual. Officers decided to search the Bunker family home, working with this theory that maybe Keely had made it back, but then left again for some reason. However, nothing in the house, nothing in Keely's room, indicated that she had returned that night. There were no signs of anything unusual or out of place. Investigators brought Monica and Wesley in again for further questioning, and once more, the two walked through the night's events step by step, down to the minute. No new information came out, so detectives tried to track Keely's phone. Unfortunately, the device was turned off, and the last signal had been picked up during the early morning hours, right around the area where she was last seen. Cell service providers responded to law enforcement's request for phone activity, but no calls or texts provided any helpful leads. Monica then gave investigators access to Keely's social media accounts to review her messages, just in case she had arranged to meet someone else that night, but that theory went nowhere. Keely's last activity online was around 2 a.m., when she posted a couple of photos from the bar where she had been with Monica and Wesley. When Monica and Wesley were called in again for another round of statements, Monica showed up immediately. She was visibly shaken, cried through most of the questioning, and was just blaming herself for what had happened. She offered any and all help she could possibly provide. Wesley, on the other hand, he started getting more and more agitated and began to treat the police like he was the one under investigation. What was more troubling, though, was that his story started to shift. He changed small details, added new ones, or just left things out. For instance, he initially claimed he had gotten sick shortly after parting ways with Keely, but he couldn't pinpoint exactly where. Later, he said that he had been mistaken and that it hadn't happened at all. He chalked up the inconsistencies to the heavy drinking that night, saying the alcohol had blurred his memory. These contradictions, they raised concerns, but detectives held off on making conclusions just yet. It was true that all three of them had been drinking, and that alone could cause some memory gaps. But when officers asked Wesley to walk through the night again, in full detail, he lost his composure. He got frustrated, demanding to know if he was being accused of something. I mean, this defensive attitude just kept raising red flags. But at that point, there was still no physical evidence tying him to a crime. The police had no grounds to charge him with anything. Not yet. The Bunkers were told about Wesley's erratic behavior, but they didn't see it as suspicious. They noted that Wesley had been friends with Keely since elementary school and figured he was just overwhelmed with worry. Monica also suggested that he might be feeling this intense guilt and stress about Keely's disappearance. Detectives, along with both Monica and Wesley, went back one more time to the last location where the friends had parted ways. They wanted to be sure nothing had been overlooked. Monica did her best to recall every detail that might help. Wesley, however, started avoiding direct questions and became increasingly defensive, acting as if he was already being blamed. With no solid leads to go on, the police quickly launched a full-scale search operation, hoping they still had a chance to find Keely alive. Less than 24 hours had passed since her disappearance, so time was critical. Search teams were formed, including officers, volunteers, Keely's family members and friends, including Monica and Wesley neighbors, and concerned locals. The area was divided into search zones, and each group was assigned a section to cover. Crews combed through vacant lots, abandoned or unfinished buildings, and a nearby park with wooded areas and a lake. It was at the lake, around 9 p.m., that a horrifying discovery was made. A team led by Keely's uncle, Jason Bunker, noticed an unusual pile of branches and leaves. Deciding to investigate, they began to clear it away. What they found underneath, oh God. It shocked everyone. A young woman's body, lying face down. It was Keely, and there was nothing anyone could be done to save her. Her body was partially submerged in the water, weighed down with branches and covered in leaves and grass. Her jeans had been pulled down and her clothing was torn, suggesting a targeted and violent assault, which was believed to be the motive behind the attack. When Keely's parents arrived at the scene, they confirmed that the remains were their daughter's. Forensic specialists thoroughly examined the area, and Keely's body was sent for an autopsy to determine the cause of death. As they feared, she had been assaulted, and no protective measures had been used, which allowed investigators to recover DNA evidence from the attacker. The official cause of death was mechanical asphyxiation. Keely had been strangled with bare hands. On top of that, her body showed signs of multiple injuries, bruises, abrasions, and defensive wounds on her arms, proving that she had fought back with everything she had. A toxicology report revealed only a low level of alcohol in her system, meaning Keely was not intoxicated and had likely been fully aware of what was happening to her. But how did she end up in that lake? The case was reclassified as a criminal investigation, and Wesley became the primary suspect. He had been the last known person to see Keely alive. He was arrested, but because there was no conclusive evidence, police couldn't hold him for more than 24 hours. Interestingly, Wesley now acted completely calm, detached, even indifferent. Phone records showed that Wesley's device had been turned off around the same time and in the same area as Keely's. While that wasn't definitive, it just added to the growing suspicion. He also had visible bruises and scratches on his body, which he couldn't clearly explain. He chose not to speak and requested an attorney. The park had several surveillance cameras, and investigators analyzed the footage carefully. One video showed a couple that looked like Wesley and Keely walking down a pathway. About 15 minutes later, a dark figure wearing a hood was seen hurrying out of the park. Though the face was obscured, authorities strongly believed it was Wesley. When they confronted him with the footage, Wesley came up with a version of events that, well, nobody saw coming. He claimed that Keely had been the one to suggest going into the park to hang out and talk, that they were just having fun, goofing around, and he'd lifted her onto his shoulders as a joke. But, he alleged, because of the alcohol he'd consumed, he lost his balance after just a few steps. He said he stumbled, fell, and Keely hit her head on the curb, and then just stopped moving. Wesley claimed he panicked when he realized Keely wasn't breathing. Overcome with fear, he said he just left her in the park and fled. However, the forensic report revealed no signs of head trauma that would support this version of events. And on top of that, this explanation didn't align at all with the evidence of an intentional physical assault. Then, Wesley suggested a new theory, that someone else must have come across Keely after he left, taken advantage of her, and then tried to cover it up by putting her body in the water. But that theory it unraveled pretty quickly. Forensic testing soon came back from the crime lab, confirming that the DNA evidence from the scene belonged to Wesley. Confronted with this, he changed his story again, offering an even more implausible explanation. Now, he claimed that Keely had lured him into the park, confessed her feelings for him, kissed him, and that they ended up being physically intimate, and that it was all by mutual consent. He insisted everything that happened was voluntary, and that afterward, they just went their separate ways. According to Wesley, someone else must have attacked Keely later on, but the autopsy results contradicted this account. The injuries Keely sustained were consistent with forced aggression, and no DNA from any other individual was found, only Wesley's. When they pushed him further, Wesley altered his story once again. He claimed Keely had certain preferences during intimacy and had asked him to be rough specifically, to apply pressure to her neck. He said he was just trying to please her and didn't realize how much force he was using until it was too late. When he noticed she was unresponsive, he panicked, dragged her to the water's edge, concealed her with branches and leaves, then went home and acted like nothing had happened. The claim that Keely had initiated anything with Wesley, or even felt romantically about him, was rejected outright by everyone who knew her. Keely saw Wesley not just as a close friend, but as a brother. She had never expressed any romantic interest in him whatsoever, something her family and close friends all confirmed. Though the exact motive remained unclear, the court concluded the crime was driven by uncontrolled passion. As the investigation went on, even more disturbing information about Wesley's past came to the surface. This wasn't his first incident. He had previously been accused of inappropriate conduct toward other women. This was, however, the first time he had taken someone's life. 2 other women came forward during the trial, both of whom had been harmed by Wesley in the past. One of them had been underage at the time of the incident. They had remained silent out of fear, but felt they had to speak up once they learned he'd been arrested. Their testimonies helped paint a fuller picture of a dangerous individual hiding behind a friendly face. The trial began in September of 2020, 1 year after Keely's life was taken by someone she had trusted so deeply. And while the act wasn't premeditated, the court found that Wesley had taken advantage of an opportunity to fulfill a disturbing impulse. Wesley Street was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison, with the possibility of parole no earlier than 30 years. He has never admitted his guilt, nor has he shown any remorse to Keely's loved ones. To this day, he continues to insist that their encounter was consensual and that her passing was a tragic accident that cost him his freedom. And that's where the legal story ends. Wesley Street is in prison, and Keely's family is left with just this gaping hole where their daughter used to be. But the real story, the human one, it doesn't really end there. Because you're left asking yourself, how? How does this happen between people who grew up together? And when you really break it down, the key factor in this whole tragedy, the one thing that allowed it all to unfold, was trust. I mean, that's the most chilling part, isn't it? The weapon Wesley used wasn't a knife he was hiding in his jacket. It was the 20 years of shared history. It was the friendly face, the childhood memories, the fact that he was a known person, he was safe, or so everyone thought. He hid in plain sight, protected by the one thing Keely and her family and friends had every reason to give him their trust. He wasn't a monster who jumped out of the shadows. He was the monster who walked beside you, joked with you, and then waited for the right moment when no one was looking. And that is a different kind of horror altogether. Look, the moral here isn't that you can't trust anyone. That's no way to live. But it's a brutal reminder that friendship and familiarity are not. They're not armor. They don't automatically guarantee your safety. You can know someone your entire life and still have no idea what they're capable of when their worst impulses take over. Wesley's own friends and Keely's parents. They dismissed his erratic behavior during the investigation. They chalked it up to stress and worry because he was Wesley. He was the kid from next door. Their minds just couldn't make the leap to him being a suspect. And that's a powerful, dangerous blind spot we all have for the people we think we know. So, how do you even begin to protect yourself from something like this? There's no perfect answer, but there are things to hold on to. First, and this is the big one, you have to listen to your gut. That little voice in the back of your head, that flicker of a feeling that something is off. It's there for a reason. It's your own internal alarm system. When Wesley's story started shifting, when he got defensive, those were red flags. Maybe not for murder, no, but they were signals that something was fundamentally wrong. We have this tendency to rationalize those feelings away, to tell ourselves we're overreacting, especially when it's a friend. We make excuses for them. You can't afford to do that. An uneasy feeling is information. Act on it. And that leads to the next thing. Don't let a shared history blind you to present-day behavior. The fact that he was a childhood friend was the only thing that protected him. But think about it, 2 other women came forward during his trial. He had a history of this kind of behavior that nobody in his close circle knew about. A person is not who they were 10 years ago. They are who they are today. If a friend is acting strange or aggressive or just not right, you have to see that for what it is, no matter how many birthdays you've celebrated together. And then there are the practical things, the simple steps that can make all the difference. When you're out, especially late at night, stay with your group. Seriously, the moment Keely separated from Monica to walk with Wesley, that was the moment she became vulnerable. It sounds so basic, but it's critical. Don't split up. And look, technology is in your pocket. Use it. Share your live location with a trusted friend or family member until you are home with the door locked. Not just for the walk, but for the whole journey. If Keely had done that, her parents or Monica would have seen her path divert into that park. And if a friend says they're home or they're on their way to get confirmation, that text Monica sent was the right instinct. But when she got no reply, that should have been an immediate, middle-of-the-night phone call. We don't want to bother people, I get it. We assume they just fell asleep. But a 30-second phone call to hear their voice and know they're safe is worth the risk of waking them up. A text can go unanswered for a dozen reasons, but a ringing phone that isn't picked up is a much louder alarm bell. This isn't about placing blame. God, no. Monica will live with that for the rest of her life, and it's not her fault, it's Wesley's. But we can learn from the mechanics of what happened. Finally, if a story like this brings anything up for you, if you or someone you know is in a situation that feels unsafe, or if you've experienced an assault, please know that you are not alone, and there are people who are ready to listen and help, right now. You can talk to someone confidentially by calling the National Sexual Assault Hotline. That's 800-656-HOPE. You can also visit their website at rain.org to use their confidential online chat. It's an incredible resource. Reaching out is a sign of strength. Keely fought back with everything she had, and telling these stories, and learning from them. That's how we keep fighting for her. That's how we try to make sure this doesn't happen to someone else.